participants in the waiting room. My name is Kelly King. I'm the Health Information Center Coordinator here at the Peel Center. The Peel Center serves families of children and young people who have disabilities from birth up to age 26, as well as the professionals who serve those individuals. And Peel does this through several projects that we operate. The Parent Training and Information Center is the most well-known of those, helping families with educational needs. And the Family to Family Health Project, the one that I'm responsible for, helps those same individuals with issues related to healthcare. And from the perspective of our federal funders, for those individuals, everything is healthcare. The primary focus of Peel's mission is to promote belonging. After all, don't we all want to be included? And so today we have a wonderful presentation ready for you with regard to alternatives to guardianship and better understanding what guardianship is. Near the end of this presentation, we're going to be asking you to complete an evaluation that's required by our federal funders, and we would really appreciate your taking just a couple of minutes of your time to complete that for us. And we would also ask that you remain muted and refrain from sharing any personal information in any question that you might want to ask. Feel free to put those questions into the chat or be prepared to ask those at the end of the session. We'll stop the recording for those. And then if you have a personal question, I'm sure you'll be invited to address that with the appropriate entity. So today, in partnership with the Pennsylvania Department of Health, United Way funded 21 Enable Project, and of course, Disability Rights of Pennsylvania, fondly known as DRP. We're delighted to have attorney Bob Lodge from DRP here today to explore, as I mentioned, alternatives to guardianship, as well as to help us understand why guardianship should be the last option. These aren't just important issues to understand, but there really are a lot of misconceptions. So your help to educate others, like, for example, perhaps educational teams, IEP teams, physicians, who might suggest that a guardianship is needed when they may not be aware that these alternatives exist. So your help in educating them and sharing what Bob's going to be presenting for us today could really be monumental in the life of somebody with a disability and enable them to have as much freedom and dignity as possible. So without delay, I would like to introduce Robert, who earned his LLM in trial advocacy from Temple University's Beasley School of Law and his doctorate in jurisprudence from Widener University School of Law. Before he worked with DRP, he worked as an assistant public defender in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, where he became the chief diversionary and reentry programs facilitator, and that included mental health treatment court and other specialty courts. His focus during his career has been to represent people with mental health and other disabilities in the legal system. So what a perfect individual to do this presentation for us. Hence, Bob is here today to help us better understand guardianship and the alternatives. Bob?
Thank you for that introduction. I just want to say thank you to the Peel Center for having us. I think it's just a great opportunity. The more people DRP can talk to and share what we do and how we can help people and what we know about the guardianship system and how we can help and give that information out, is just hugely important to educate everyone and be advocates for themselves also. So I have a bit of a slideshow, and I'll go through some information about DRP and what we do, and we'll talk about alternatives to guardianship.
Bob, you're muted.
Oh, I'm muted. Okay, well, I will start over, and I'll take that as, at least I didn't get halfway through the presentation before that. So I just wanted to thank you for having DRP, and we're happy to work with the Peel Center and be able to discuss alternatives to guardianship and talk about what DRP does and how we can help people in Pennsylvania. And we'll talk a little bit about guardianships and with the alternatives, also what to do if there is a guardianship put in place and how we can help with that, and how you can be an advocate for yourself or your family member. And then we'll definitely have time at the end for questions, and we can, anything that goes into great detail I'll give information at the end how you can contact DRP. We do have a live intake line Monday through Friday from 9 to 3, and we have attorneys and other staff members staffing that. And you can call and we can help you, and gets assigned to an attorney or staff member that can help you with that information in that specific case. So we have different attorneys and different staff members that deal in specific areas, like I handle guardianship. So if you do call in, you'll probably end up talking to me in the next few days. So let's get started a little bit. So I'll be referring to DRP here. Let's see if, okay, there we go. So DRP is a public interest law firm. We're a nonprofit, a 501c3 corporation. And so we are an independent organization and we're statewide. So we can help anyone out in the state. And we do have contact. Sometimes a family member from Florida or another state will call to discuss a family member or friend they have in Pennsylvania. So that's fine too. So if you're out of state and you're reaching out to us for someone in state, that is completely fine too. So we are a designated federal mandated protection advocacy agency in Pennsylvania. So a lot of times you'll hear that as DRP is a PNA, which is Protection Advocacy Agency. And we provide legal advocacy services to protect the rights of individuals with disabilities. So this is a congressional established organization, and there is actually over 50. Each state and each U.S. territory has one, and we have a kind of a parent organization, the National Disability Rights Network, and that's where we work together with other PNAs to help ensure people's rights with disabilities and how we can better protect them and integrate them into society. Hold on a second, I'm just going to move my screen a little bit here, so I apologize. So we are statewide. We have a number of different offices, but now not the benefit of COVID, but the change of it is we can work from home and really work with anyone throughout the state and have meetings with them. So the one benefit to changing over and seeing the importance of technology, I think that gives us the opportunity to help more people. So I think that's a great benefit. And our whole job is to improve services and social systems and ensure civil rights and empower people in the community and provide technologies and trainings like this to better educate people so they're aware and their families are aware of what rights they have. And I think that is a huge part of disability rights task, is making sure everyone understands their rights. And as we know, whether it's schools, hospitals, sometimes places of authority and or people in those positions tell us things and they're not always accurate or right. So having an organization that has the ability to, you can reach out to and confirm information, or we can help you and point you in the right direction to give you those resources, is very helpful. So our philosophy is about equality. People with disabilities are full and equal persons under the law and are entitled to equal access and safety, respect, and dignity. So people with disabilities are entitled to be free of abuse, neglect, exploitation, and discrimination, segregation, and isolation, like everyone is. And people with disabilities should have that access to appropriate services and supports, and independent living as much as possible, self-direction, and inclusion. So that is a big part of it, as in the past, inclusion was not the main focus, and there was segregation and there was facilities, and it wasn't about having people in the classroom, having people with disabilities making choices for themselves. So as a protection advocacy agency, the rights of people with disabilities are our main priority. And kind of how this has evolved over the years, our different acts gave us this. So Developmental Disabilities Act in 1986, mental illness, and then 93, individual rights, and in 94 we started focusing on assistive technologies, and in 99 barriers to employment with Social Security beneficiaries. And in 2000 started working with traumatic brain injury, 2002 voting access, and in 2018 with the Payees program through Social Security. So just good. Our goals and objectives, one, they do change every year. So our priorities We have a survey that goes out every year, and you can find that on our website also. It just concluded this year, but that's something where Pennsylvania and our citizens can kind of drive that where they want to see focuses and our resources go to year, and so we can evolve with what's needed in the community. So the more people that can take the survey, the better, so we get more input. So currently our goals and objectives are stop the abuse, neglect, and rights violations of people with disabilities, address the segregation, institutionalization, and treatment issues of people with mental illness and developmental disabilities, and promote consumer-driven, person-centered planning and recovery-oriented services to eligible people with disabilities to live at home or in the community, and eliminate discrimination against people with disabilities and conduct rights trainings and outreach in Pennsylvania. So obviously we do things just like this, trainings and educations. We also have an arm that does investigations and monitoring. So we have the right to go to schools, hospitals, nursing homes, anywhere anyone with a disability could be treated. We're able to go in there and see what's happening, how they're being treated, talk with the clients, get their records, and be able to make sure there is checks and balances there. And we also do policy advocacy. So we push the legislature and work with them to better help people with disabilities. And we can also sometimes have to go through litigation to get some of these things done. And one of our main areas, I think, is intake and case services. And that is people in Pennsylvania being able to call themselves about an issue, or a loved one being able to call, or someone with a concern can reach out to us and we can help them. So a lot of this is just our different tools. We have a large resource page on our website that has lots of information, whether it's mental health, estate planning, substitute decision makers and guardianship, which we'll be talking about today, but also rights under housing, assistive technologies. So there is, if you're not sure where to go at some point, you're not sure what you want to reach out to DRP about, one, just reach out to us anyway, and we can kind of help direct you, or you can go to our website and look at our resource page and kind of do a little bit more reading and education there. And you may be able to find your answer on that page. So what goes into guardianship, and that's what I want to have this side, is freedom to make decisions. So historically, people with disabilities were presumed unable to make decisions. And I mean, that is really the root of guardianships. Many people with disabilities lived in institutions, and decision makers were the institutions. And it wasn't necessary for the person living there to make decisions. And today, integration is the norm, and that is the push. And most people with disabilities live in the community. Decision making by people with disabilities is everyday decisions, personal decisions, financial decisions, healthcare decisions. So let's see here. Sorry, boxes are popping up. So adults, even with disabilities, have the right and are presumed to have the capacity to make their own decisions. And that's really what we're talking about today. Freedom to make decisions is a fundamental right of personal autonomy and self-direction. And adults' rights to make their own decisions can sometimes be limited. People with disabilities may need support, and through supportive decision-making, and sometimes, however, there is that next level, which is substitute decision makers, which we'll also talk about today. So there's a number of alternatives to guardianship, and that's where I'll focus first. And then we can talk after this about guardianship, and then the second, if there is a current guardianship, what can be done to review that, or what other options are there. So there's a number of alternatives to guardianship. These are kind of the main group, but there's healthcare representatives, there's healthcare advance directive, supportive decision-making, representative payees, financial power of attorneys, trust, able count, and just becoming a co-signing on someone's account. So, and I think healthcare representative, I do a lot of focus on this because I have a lot of calls on intake. And a lot of times what happens is someone's turning 18 soon, and whether it's someone at the school or whether it's a doctor at their healthcare facility they're getting treatment at, someone mentions, hey, when they're 18, we can't talk to you anymore. So you need to get a guardianship. So Pennsylvania law, they call Act 169, this was actually passed in 2008, allows certain family members or friends to make healthcare decisions for someone and be there and be able to help them at the appointments, make the appointments. And this gets around HIPAA, which is a benefit. I'm sure if we all dealt with HIPAA before and someone mentioning, well, we can't talk to you about this because they can't bring it up because of HIPAA. I don't know if everyone knows what HIPAA actually means when they tell us that, but I believe it's happened to all of us. And by becoming someone's healthcare representative, this is a form that you sign, and it allows you with the penalty of perjury. So there is an enforcement to this form. So not just anyone can sign this without any penalty. But if you're there, a healthcare representative is such a huge tool. And so if someone can make all their own decisions, but there is an issue with making healthcare decisions, which is a lot for anyone, even without a disability. And there are some guidelines here, whether they're 18 or graduated from high school, married, and I'll let you kind of read over those requirements. But this is a great tool that, one, we even have a copy on our website, but I'm sure if you Google Pennsylvania Healthcare Representative, you can find this 2-page form, and you're putting the party's name and you're signing the form. But this has been around since 2008, and most courts and most places I go, unless they're really pushing for change and looking into these alternatives, they're not aware of healthcare representatives. And I would have to say half the calls I get are people who are reaching out because they can't help their child with healthcare decisions anymore. They can't help make appointments. They can't be in there to answer some questions. And that's a huge problem when, you know, we're really talking the day before their 18th birthday. You can be in that room helping them and request records if needed. And then a day later, all of a sudden, they're off on their own. They're 18, they're adults now, and you have no say. So this is a great tool. And I think this solves a lot of problems for many of the callers. So there are limits to healthcare representative authority. They can't refuse life-preserving treatments for a person that doesn't have an end-stage disease or who is not permanently unconscious. They don't talk about these limits, but there's also other limitations to guardianship. So these restrictions have been kind of inferred to imply also. So whether it's a guardianship or healthcare representative, you know, you can't have the right to make a decision to remove someone's healthy body organ, no experimental treatments, commitment to a psychiatric hospital or state center. And those restrictions are also for guardians. So then there's also another alternative, healthcare advance directives. A healthcare advance directive can also be called a healthcare power of attorney, a living will, or there can be a combination of that name. And those with sufficient capacity to understand documents designated other to make decisions for them can sign this form. So there has to be a level of capacity of understanding of what this form is when signing it to be able to do this. And I've run into cases where maybe a healthcare provider or someone doesn't believe someone has capacity because they can't tell them that. And I think that's another barrier to get over also, is just because someone can't traditionally communicate with you doesn't mean they don't have that capacity. And when I have clients, many of them communicate in different ways, whether they use a device, whether they write it down, whether I need a sign language interpreter. So I think this is a great tool, and sometimes just immediately people don't believe this is a tool they can use because maybe traditionally maybe they can't sign their name, or someone can't indicate that they understand this. But obviously, as I'm guessing many people here are family members and people close to someone with a disability, even if someone can't communicate and speak to you directly, that doesn't mean they can't communicate. So that's a huge part of this too, is about informing people about how someone communicates and how they communicate with you and what their understanding is. So there's also healthcare advance directives. So healthcare advance directive uses the word sound mind, can make a healthcare advance directive as long as he or she meets the following. They have to be 18 years or older, graduate high school, married, or an emancipated minor. And this is also a great tool because one, it allows someone to put their wishes of what they want to happen to them, medicine-wise, treatment-wise. They can kind of put that on the record at this time if they're going in the future. If you want to look at someone with perhaps Alzheimer's, in a case like that, they can put their wishes out there, whether they want to be on a ventilator. So that's a huge tool to allow someone to express their wishes and have that dignity of making these decisions. So supported decision-making. So legislatively, supported decision-making isn't recognized in Pennsylvania, but in the court system, it is recognized as a tool to help someone with disabilities. And what really supportive decision-making is what it sounds like and how we all use and make decisions, which is having the people around you and talking with that and having that supportive network around you is a huge part of that. And I think that's not always expressed in court. If there's a guardianship hearing that other parties don't want, it's not always being pointed out about who this person has in their corner, whether it's their parents, their friends, their family, but having that network is a huge part of making decisions and living anyone's life. And that gets overlooked sometimes, but that is a huge important part of it. And just like any of us make large or big decisions, even small ones, we contact our family or talk to your fathers, mothers, brothers, and our neighbors, and have that community. That is just as important for someone with a disability, and is important in any of these manners to have and bring up that it's a great tool. And whether you have a disability or not, having that network and reaching out to people, it's presumed that you're going to be doing that. You have that network. But when it comes to cases dealing with, let's say we're fighting against a guardianship, that is not one of the key points that's always brought up. And some people have huge family networks, and they always have someone there for them to help make decisions, whether it's brothers, sisters. So that's another aspect you want to keep in mind of that. So there is also the Rep Payee program. So Rep Payee program is a program when a person is not able to manage their own money due to a disability, and they receive Social Security benefits, whether it's SSI or SSD, the Social Security Administration will name a Rep Payee to receive their benefits. So it's not necessary for the beneficiary to be adjudicated incapacitated, which is an important aspect of this. So if someone has trouble managing their money, this can be done through Social Security. So it doesn't have to be done through the court. Finding someone incapacitated is a legal term. So that's what I think gets overlooked also sometimes by medical providers. They'll do a report that goes to the court saying this person doesn't have capacity. And capacity is really a legal term, and that's a determination by a judge, not by a medical provider. They may do the reports and put the information down, but that is a court that has to find that. So you can be able to do this and help someone with their finances without even going through the court process. And if you become a representative payee, you must use these benefits to, there's a system. First, you have to pay the individual's current needs, whether it's housing, food, utilities, healthcare, clothing, and personal care. And then second would be, once those expenses are paid, would be past due bills. So then it could be entertainment and other things like that. And the third would be saving any funds remaining after these expenses. And that's also a great tool. I think in 90% of the cases I deal with, having a responsible party become rep payee and having a healthcare representative typically resolves any issues the family was having, and a guardianship can be avoided. So also, like the healthcare power of attorney, there's also financial power of attorneys. In that same way, for those with sufficient capacity to understand the concept of allowing another to make your decisions for them, they can create a financial power of attorney to identify another person to make these decisions. So it's just another great tool there that we've had cases in the past where a client has guardianship, the parents have guardianship to help, and it's really based on financial issues, and they're working, and you find out it's actually much better, and it's really even better for the family to have that financial power of attorney in place instead of a guardianship, because really a guardianship is all encompassing. And when you have someone that's an adult and they want to move out on their own, job wise, it can create tension with the family. And so when you find these steps that are able to support them without taking all those decisions away, it's a huge benefit. So there's also trusts. When a person with a disability receives a large sum of money, that might jeopardize their eligibility for government benefits. And so this money can be placed in a trust and be managed by a trustee. And it's always important to talk to someone who manages these trusts and knows these trusts, because not all trusts are eligible for this, but there are specific trusts, and this instrument can be used so they can still receive their benefits, but this money can be used for specific things, whether it's housing, care. So that's also an important aspect, because if a child with disabilities is living with their parents and they pass away and there is finances, there's a house, there's assets, if this just goes to that person and they have government benefits, they're going to lose those benefits until this money is drawn down. So by creating this type of trust, you then have the ability to still be able to help that child, and they're able to have those benefits still and be able to draw from this money for specific things, like healthcare, food, housing, and it's a great tool. And then there is also, Pennsylvania has PA-able accounts that allows individuals with qualified disabilities to save without risk of loss of their SSI or SSD. Because the whole point is you don't have to penalize someone for saving or working and not having these benefits. Because even if someone has a large amount of money, that can be quickly drawn down. And to qualify this, a person must be on SSI or SSD, whether it's due to blindness or disability, and it must have started before the age of 26 to have an ABLE account. And individuals, family members, and friends can contribute to these funds, and it can be up to $16,000 a year. And there's other requirements to it, and with the amount you can have. And it doesn't lock the money; it can be used in different ways, also. So it does, whether it's education, vocational training, different supports, housing, transportation, healthcare, legal fees. So you can have access to this money and it can be used. And I think the concern with trust and different accounts are, will this money be going to something too restrictive and not actually be able to help the person you're trying to help? So, and they can be, and it's always beneficial to work with someone that understands these and understands these accounts and these trusts. And there's a lot of experts out there, just to make sure that nothing's going into account that will affect their benefits down the road. And then one of the easier ones is also a co-signatory on an account. So if a person with disability can make some, but not all their financial decisions, this is a good way to be able to have access to, whether it's the online banking to help track that or help pay bills, and work with them and still be able to have an eye on the finances, but not having to take over complete control of that. And that's also a great tool. So there's that oversight there where you can make sure bills are getting paid without taking all financial control away from a person. So what I also see is a lot of when someone's trying to put a guardianship in place, they're talking about, well, I'm doing this to protect the person from, I'm concerned my son or daughter about abuse, neglect, financial exploitation. But just like DRP is a tool that can be used to help someone with a disability, Pennsylvania also has protective services. And these are also used for that. So there's Child Protective Services, which covers children under the age of 18. And then there's Adult Protective Services that is from 18 to 59. And that's administered by Department of Human Services. And they investigate claims. And then there's Older Adult Protective Services, and that covers someone 60 or older, and that's administered by the PA Department of Aging. And they also have an arm that does investigations. And I just think these are very important tools also, that when someone's thinking about, do I need guardianship, and you're concerned about abuse, neglect, or financial exploitation, that's why these services are also in place. Their job is not just to protect and investigate someone in Pennsylvania without a disability, but it's everyone in Pennsylvania. And this is a great tool to always keep in mind. And they have, Older Adult Protective Services has a 1-800 number. They all have phone numbers they can call. There's voluntary reporting. So anyone who has cause to believe that an adult with a disability or an older adult needs protective services, they can report it by calling the hotline. And if your child or person is getting treatment at a facility or going to day programs, there's mandatory reporters. So employees and administrative of certain facilities, such nursing homes, personal care homes, providers, like home health agents, are required to make reports when they suspect that an adult with a disability or an older adult is being victimized. So to talk a little bit about guardianships now, and some of the issues with guardianship. One, there's many issues, I would have to say, probably with guardianship, but kind of one of the first and foremost is, one, it's an expensive process. You're going to court, you're having a court hearing, you're getting lawyers involved, you're getting experts involved. And maybe that's because you think you need a guardianship because a healthcare issue, one of these smaller things, and that could be dealt with a healthcare representative, financial power of attorney, and you're spending $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 to get this guardianship that could be contested and end up being in court when it's not really needed. And really, guardianship is the most restrictive form of substitute decision making, and it limits someone's autonomy. Ooh. And also, it can create issues with families. And a lot of the calls we get are from family members who are having issues and don't believe what the other family member who got guardianship, what they're doing is right, and they're getting adult protective services involved. And the Guardianship Act is really meant, part of the petition, and what you have to do is talk about these alternatives and why these wouldn't work for you. And I really think a lot of these are, the benefit of them is they're smaller steps, and yet you need to see if they work before you get to this level of filing for guardianship. And a lot of times you'll find you can take 1 or 2 of these or 3 or 4 of them and have these less restrictive options and be able to support someone in the community or at a facility without having to go for guardianship and take away these rights. Because I do think it is a more difficult thing to get rid of a guardianship down the road. And that's another issue I hear sometimes of, well, if we don't need this in a few years, we can always get rid of it. Well, having someone deemed to not have capacity and then have a guardianship put in place, it's much easier and cheaper to try these alternatives and see if they're able to work for you. And if they're not, then maybe step them up, or, I mean, as a last resort, there is always guardianship, and I think that's where the court is starting to focus more. Montgomery County does an amazing job with this in their court, and that one of the programs, there's an IOLTA program that with guardianships through Montgomery County, and now it's also in Delaware, Chester, Montgomery, and Bucks County. And we help with alternatives to guardianship. And there's a push to appoint counsel for everyone. So once a guardianship is filed, the party that you're filing this against, they don't have an attorney. They have a right to request an attorney at this time, but they don't have a right to actually have an attorney. So in certain counties like Montgomery County, they will automatically appoint an attorney, which is a huge deal. And that protects that person's rights. And it's needed. And that doesn't mean every time an attorney is appointed, there's no guardianship. Sometimes there is, but the benefit is you then have someone who has an expertise in this field of guardianship discussing the alternatives to guardianship and how they fit with everyone and everything. And it is a newer area of the law. And yes, some of these have been out for almost 20 years now, but this is still information that has to be pushed, and people have to understand these options. And that's where even everyone on this meeting here, it's an important tool that, and I always tell every client that we go through this and I talk to their family members and the other attorneys, and we do trainings, that this is information that needs to be pushed more, like the healthcare representative. I talked to 1 out of 10 people may know what a healthcare representative is, and that's it's been around since 2008. So that's things we need to start pushing more and letting the providers know about. So when you go into the hospital and you have this form, there's a lot of misinformation where I've gotten calls before where someone has a guardianship and then they're told, well, you don't have a power of attorney, so I can't talk to you. So we have to push that information out there and get it out there that what a healthcare representative is, and if you have power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, what that means. And so how to contact DRP is we have a website, and on our website, disabilityrightspa.org, we have intake forms that can be filled out and they get submitted, and then they go to the attorneys that are reviewing the intakes, or you can call our intake line and someone will pick up, and if you leave a message, someone will get back to you. So I always say, if there's a question you're not sure, always reach out. That's what we're here for.